who are they maddest at? They're maddest at scribes. Jesus has his harshest condemnations for who? The people writing the canon. Those are the people he's flipping pissed at, right? Because they've perverted the canon. They've rewritten the history. And yet we buy it. And yet Christians who love Jesus, we look at those scribes in the Old Testament that they passed down to us and we go, oh, I love you. And we just gobble it all up. And you say, well, wait a minute. Kind of one of the things Jesus was trying to get across is that you scribes have corrupted. In the scriptures, ye think ye have salvation. You think it's in there. You've screwed it all up, right? And he's using the scriptures against them. He's battling these scribes to try to restore the ancient Israelite religion. Now we get a flood of apocryphal documents that say exactly that. And the Book of Mormon, first of them, says exactly that. Says you used to have all these plain and precious truths.
About it all action.
Centuries later, the Testament of Nephilim is discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Just like that, the dating that they've put on this text got blown away.
It seems manifestly more likely on its face that there were actually things in the history of their own people that they believed they were carrying on, restoring, or responding to. And that's what the Apocrypha, the Book of Mormon, suggests.
You don't stone a prophet because he's speaking nonsense. You stone a prophet because he's speaking the truth.
Even at the very sort of softest level, it's an astonishing vindication for Joseph Smith.
Jesus and John are restorers. They're coming to restore the ancient Israelite religion, not to just change it.
Is it more likely that Christianity came from somewhere, or is it Christianity ex nihilo?
Bart D. Ehrman gets all this hate because he follows through with it.
This video is brought to you by scripturenotes.com. For a free trial to Scripture Notes, please make sure you check out the link in the description. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Word Radio. I'm your host, Cardon Ellis. Today I'm joined in the studio by Dave Butler, author of In the Language of Adam, and Jonah Barnes, author of a new book coming out called The Key to the Keystone. And we'd like to remind you that all of our scriptural references in this video will be brought to you by Scripture Notes. And we're going to be talking today about a really an interesting thesis here. Bart D. Ehrman versus the Book of Mormon, coming straight at you via Jonah Barnes. Tell us what you're talking about, Jonah.
I have a point of order first.
Oh, point of order.
Yeah, point of order. So in as much as issues like hiring and tenure relate to publication in the academic world, I don't think Jonah can any longer be the associate professor of all things apocryphal.
Oh.
I think that he has to be now the professor of all things apocryphal.
No, but then he loses the alliteration. So it was the associate professor.
So we changed the alliteration to make him like the potent professor of all things apocryphal.
Potent?
Yeah.
What about the potentate? Hey, I'll take that.
The papal professor
The
of all things
the Pope, the Pope of the Apocrypha. Hey.
Oh, the Pope of the Apocrypha. That might work. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. In the meantime, we are going to be continuing speaking about Bart D. Ehrman versus the Book of Mormon. I know he's a controversial character, but what's so interesting is I read his book, Misquoting Jesus. I have now read almost every single one of his publications, everything from Forged to Lost Christianities to Lost Scriptures, his translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls, so on and so forth. He was recommended to me by a stake president, one of the most spiritual and lovely men that I ever knew. Shout out to Manhattan, I think it was Manhattan 8th Ward. Had a wonderful experience reading that. And what's so funny is because so many evangelicals credit him with having destroyed their faith because he shows the errancy of the Bible and so on and so forth. But he ends up being wildly faith promoting in a backdoor way that I don't think even he intended by, engaging in the scholarship that he engages in and misquoting Jesus was wildly faith promoting for me. And the funny part is in like the first or second paperback edition of Misquoting Jesus, there's a Q&A that the publisher added in the back of the book. And I no longer have the copy of that book because I've given away so many copies of it to friends and family. But I have to track down what version of the book it's in. But there's this Q&A where he says like, where, the person asks him like, okay, well, where are you in your faith now? Oh, do you think like the Bible is this, and he answers a very interesting question where they say like, how well received is your work or whatever. And he's like, well, for some people it's really difficult and it's it hits him hard finding out the Bible wasn't perfect. And I always thought it was growing up. And he talks about how he went to this theological kind of like seminary school or whatever. But then he says, except for Mormons, he's like, I get sent copies of the Book of Mormon like once a week. Somebody sends me a copy of the Book of Mormon and says, man, bro, you got to read this book, dog. You know? And he's like, everybody else here, it's like destroying their faith. Meanwhile, Mormons are like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so.
Right. So that's
anyway,
what we're gonna talk about. So Dr. Bart D. Ehrman, I have a kind of a roller coaster relationship with Dr. Ehrman. That at first I loved the guy, and then I hated the guy. I read Misquoting Jesus. My father actually gave it to me to read. My faithful LDS High Councilman father, and I loved it. And then I kind of didn't. I saw some of his speeches and things. I thought, oh, I don't like him. And then I went back and I liked him more. And then so I've always been up and down. And now I think I get it. Like, I feel kind of bad for the guy. Like, the poor guy is just trying to do some academic work, and I can't imagine the type of hate mail this dude must get. Yeah. But geez. So okay, if you're not familiar, so Dr. Ehrman, a theme of some of his research in early Christianity and the canonization of the formation of the New Testament canon and things. What he does is he just kind of points out that you got to be honest about how the stuff was put together, and you can't have too many stars in your eyes about it. And he gets a lot of flack for that. And one of the things that we're going to talk about here is he talks about Messianism in the Old Testament. I like to say Christians will go blind trying to squint so hard and find the Messiah in the Old Testament. And when I read the Old Testament, if I read it like Bart Ehrman, if I just read the Old Testament, I'm like, not a lot of Messiah in here. Like, not a lot of Messiah in here.
Okay.
Like, yeah, maybe here, maybe there. Okay. But consider, this is the most important thing out of things. Out of everything that ever thinged in the history of things, the most important thing is the Messiah, and we can barely whisper it in the Old Testament. It's like, it's always like in a poem, in a metaphor. It's always like hidden under a layer. It's always blah, blah, blah. Whereas then the Book of Mormon comes in, kicks through the door like the Kool-Aid guy, and is like, Messiah, what's up? And just starts spouting Messianism from the very beginning, and scares the crap out of people who know the Old Testament, because they say, whoa, you can't talk about that like that right now. You can't do that. Yeah. You have to have it in a poem. You have to shroud it in an allegory or something. You can't just come right out and say it. And the Book of Mormon, from the first page, starts spouting Messianism. So, Bart D. Ehrman is talking about how Christians want to read Messianism into the Old Testament. And he kind of points holes in their logic. And he says, that's not really what that passage means. This is one wonderful quotation that I pulled from. Actually, these are two. No one prior to Christianity took these passages, Isaiah 53, Isaiah 7, Moses talking about a prophet will rise up, or things in the Old Testament that Christians will point to, and they'll say, look, that's Jesus. Look, you can see it right here. That's Jesus. That's clearly Jesus. And he points out, he just says, look, no one prior to Christianity took these passages to refer to a future Messiah. There was not a Jew on the planet who thought the Messiah was going to be crushed by his enemies, humiliated, tortured, and executed. That was the opposite of what the Messiah would do. To call Jesus the Messiah made no sense, i.e., it was nonsense, virtually by definition. And that was the major reason most Christians rejected the Christian claim about Jesus, because their idea at the time Christ came, the Jews had an idea that the Messiah would be a conqueror, that he would be the lawgiver, that he would be the sword of Judah and, fight the Romans. Nobody thought he would look like Jesus. But Christians will look at Isaiah or the suffering servant and things like this, and they'll say, clearly that's Jesus. And Bart Ehrman says, not clearly. Right? Okay. That's all he's saying. He's saying, not clearly. Okay. Like, don't don't exaggerate here. Like if you interpret it that way, okay, maybe okay, but don't use words like clearly, because Jews all over the world read the exact same thing and are unfazed.
Okay.
So that's Bart D. Ehrman's claim.
I'm just going to say right now, I think Bart D. Ehrman, you are invited to come into our studio and talk to us anytime about this. I'll reach out to him. I'll try and track him down. I think after some solid conversations with us, he's going to understand how his research perfectly dovetails into the theology of Joseph Smith and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and is going to get baptized and very promptly be called to be an apostle in our faith. If not, just because he already has the apostolic name, Bart D. Ehrman. See, it's just like Russell M. Nelson.
Yes.
Bart D. Ehrman.
Yes.
Jeffrey R. Holland. He's already
Yes.
using the monikers, man.
Yes, Brad Q. Whitbeck.
Yeah, exactly.
2028.
D. John Butler, the first apostle with long hair and a stash.
Sure.
That's right.
Seems inevitable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think we should start calling you president. So
We actually don't know which apostles back then had mustaches. I'm just saying.
Dude, that
we
is
don't know.
hilarious.
We
That's
don't know
true.
if Paul
That's
had a
true.
mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know.
So keep going, my man.
Okay, so so Bart D. Ehrman he's just reading the text and he's saying, I don't know, guys. I don't know. This is a bit of a stretch. So also E.D. Howe, author of Mormonism Unveiled, he correctly points this out in his book where he says he's criticizing the Book of Mormon and the Messianism that comes early in the Book of Mormon. Remember, this is Old Testament times, it's 600 BC. And he says, here's another miracle. The law was abrogated at that time and the Nephites were Christians. The Christian religion was revealed and made known to the Nephites 600 years before the advent of Jesus Christ. If we are to take the brass plate revelation for sacred truth, we must infer that there has been a great deficiency in the record. Okay. So now E.D. Howe, even though I'm not a huge fan of E.D. Howe, obviously, he's actually correct about this. This is right. The brass plates in the Book of Mormon pulls no punches, and it says Messianism was preached from the beginning. Now, that's the laughing stock.
Well, from the beginning, so much so that they were angry with Lehi when he did it and engaged in violence against him in Jerusalem.
That it was
Yeah.
If that had been nonsense,
Yeah.
you wouldn't stone a dude for nonsense. You'd just say he's crazy.
Yeah.
But if it was something you were familiar with and you had, remember, you don't send someone to the Chateau d'If because they're guilty. You send them to the Chateau d'If because they're innocent. And you don't want anyone knowing it. That's why you send him to the Chateau d'If. You don't stone a prophet because he's speaking nonsense. You stone a prophet because he's speaking the truth. That's why you stone a prophet.
Okay.
And so
And
they
the
knew.
truth you know about.
You know about. Yeah. So
You don't get
Messianism-
angry. Like if you're George Bush and the CIA and you know that the CIA killed JFK, you don't get angry at the guy that's saying, it was, the Africans that did it.
Right.
It was the Puerto Ricans that did it. You know what I'm saying? You get angry at the dude that says it was the CIA that was doing it.
Yes, you don't send D.B. Cooper to kill Tupac because Tupac built the jungle gym wrapped in tinfoil that got us to the moon. That's not why you do that. Right? I mean, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
so
I mean-
put someone in the Chateau d'If because you're afraid of them, because you're afraid other people will respond to them.
Sorry, I was talking
Yeah.
about Tupac.
Yeah, I know.
Dave, where are you going?
Let me rephrase that. You put Tupac Shakur in the Chateau d'If because you're afraid his message to the French people will be listened to.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Someone has listened to Shakur in the original French.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so this is E.D. Howe is correct. He says, wait a minute, Bart Ehrman's right. Book of Mormon is wrong and is saying there's Messianism from the beginning. Now then, player 3 enters the game. Okay? All of a sudden, Kool-Aid guy, everyone laughs him out of the room, but he's joined by all these apocryphal books. All these texts
Cool. Hit it.
come out of the woodwork, right?
Cool,
And they
rock
start
on.
flooding down. Now I have a little screen cap of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are just, it's all over the place.
Okay.
Of what the Messianism pre-Jesus purported to look like. So all of these books that you're reading here, these all purport to be or talking about pre-Christian Messianism. Okay. And these are all apocryphal works. Okay. The Egyptian life of Adam and Eve, the ascension of Isaiah, the history of John in the Armenian, the Testament of Benjamin, Testament of Levi, so forth. Okay. So these are all These are all purported to be pre-Christian, and they're mentioning Messianic themes. So naturally, all scholars will say, well, they can't be pre-Christian because they talk about Christ. So they can't be pre-Christian. Okay, well, that's circular logic here, bro. And we know that they did talk about Christ pre-Christ because we have the Book of Mormon. So we got to throw out that dismissal there. That doesn't work. So Egyptian life of Adam and Eve, verse 22, verse 6. Okay, God saying to Adam, I will take all this upon myself in order to save you. You're suffering, you're treading, you're walking about. I will take it upon myself. He's saying this to Adam. Okay?
Cool.
Again, Adam and Eve, they react to it. They're sad and sorrowed because God's word came to them and said that because God had told them that he would suffer for their salvation. So this isn't just somebody writing in a line when God said, oh, also sonship, also the Messiah.
Okay.
It's part of the narrative. They react to it. It's part of the conversation. Wait, you're going to come down and save us? And they get sorrowful. Then there's Ascension of Isaiah. The Son, they will crucify him on a tree. History of John. God says, I shall be tormented, crucified, buried, and I shall rise up after 3 days. Yeah. So what I'm trying to answer here is, was the Messiah preached before Christ? And why don't we hear about it in the canon? And these both get answered in the same way. Egyptian life of Adam and Eve. The people of the Jews will put me to death. So now it's not just, hey, this a different belief about your doctrine. Now it has real life kind of implications for you and your own guilt. Okay, so the scribes listening to this, reading this, are going, oh crap. The Testament of Benjamin on his deathbed, he says, the prophecy will be fulfilled. The Lamb of God, the Savior of the world, a blameless one, will be delivered up to lawless men, and a sinless one shall die for ungodly men. So now people are starting to go, wait, who's he talking about? And the prophecy is starting to get real.
So do we have any evidence that these aren't just post Christ coming, like Christian revisions of the Old Testament, trying to like go back and fill in the blanks? Did these manuscripts, do some of them actually predate Christ? And we can say, hold on a second, this is the Jews were a lot more messianic and spiritually messianic, while in the Judahites were viewing him as more politically messianic.
Yeah. So let's I'm going to come at this a couple ways.
Okay.
The Testament of Benjamin is one book included in the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, which is kind of a corpus. It's got, essentially, it's the sons of Jacob on their deathbed, their last testament, their last words. Okay. The Testament of Benjamin is one of those sections. There's another section called the Testament of Naphtali.
Okay.
Now, the Testament of Naphtali was known about in the 18th century. Okay. And there was a guy walking around saying, hey, this Testament of Naphtali is pretty cool. You guys ever heard of this? And he was laughed out of the room. It was, quote, disparaged as a mere Christian forgery because it had Christianity in it pre-Christ. And everybody knows that it's a Christian forgery. It must have been an interpolation post-fact, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And they all go, get that out of here. And they chase the guy out of the room, right? Laugh him out of the room. So then... so they say it's a shameless pretension to antiquity. Let's see.
That's, you said, the Testament of
Naphtali. Naphtali, one of the 12 Patriarchs, okay? Testament of Benjamin is another one of the 12 Patriarchs.
Okay, rock on.
Then, centuries later, the Testament of Naphtali is discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls, which date to 100 BC.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So just like that, the dating that they've put on this text got blown away by almost 2,000 years in a snap. They say, oh, obviously that's just from the 15th century, some forgery. Ugh, please don't even insult us with your silly Testament of Naphtali. Then they find it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they're like, oh, snaps.
Okay, so if I summarize this, the Testament of Naphtali is a spiritually messianic book that predicts a Messiah that will be delivered up to lawless men, slain, and basically fulfill what happened to Jesus Christ. But it was otherwise and previously disregarded from the canon because all the sanitization that had happened by the scribal class of the Old Testament had so successfully convinced Christian academics that there was nothing but a misunderstanding or an absence of messianic prophecies about Jesus Christ, so much so that if somebody spoke about it, it had to have been a post-Christian forgery.
Yeah, so the Testament of Naphtali isn't as overt as the Testament of Benjamin. That says lawless men, crucified, son of God, all that good specific stuff. But the Testament of Naphtali does say that someday a man working righteousness and working mercy will come. He shall be called the compassion of the Lord. Okay, and they read those words and they said, "Oh, this is Christianity. Get this out of here. Come on!" And they threw it out because they said, "Oh, this is some Christian after the fact." Just like you're wondering, how do we know these aren't forgeries? They went back and they just put it in the text to suit their Christianity. But oh, come on, we're not going to believe this, right? And they threw it out. And then in a snap, some kid threw a rock into a cave in Jordan. Boom, and they find the Testament of Naphtali, and guess what? It dates 1,600 years earlier than they originally thought.
Wow!
Just like poof, all of their model, all of their chronology, all of this that they built on this tiny little card, the Lord just goes and flicks that card out, and everything comes crashing down. All that chronology comes crashing down.
So, would you say that the Testament of Naphtali is probably the biggest proof, for lack of a better term, that HMD is kind of bogus?
Yeah, I think Testament of Naphtali is probably the poster child.
That most academic dating through just contextualizing the words and understanding the text and so on and so forth is hogwash, because the archaeological evidence of the dating of the Testament of Naphtali just completely destroyed the academic consensus.
Yeah, look, I get how they're dating things, and some of it is very erudite, some of it is very educated guesses, but they're still guesses. They're still guesses, and the logic that they use all the time is they say, well, you can't have Christ before Christ. Nobody knew about Christ before Christ. How can that's impossible? That's an anachronism.
Okay.
Now, if you know the Book of Mormon is true, which it absolutely is, you have to dismiss that argument. You have to, because we know they had Christ before Christ. We know they did. Abinadi says Jacob says there were no prophets save they did testify of the Messiah.
True.
He's not saying, oh, well, there was this one prophecy you forgot, or two prophecies you forgot. No, Jacob goes so far as to say there weren't prophecies, but prophesied of the Messiah. It was a rash all over the ancient Israelite world. And so when we read the Bible, we have to raise an eyebrow and say, it's not here. Why isn't it here? So when the academics come out and say, oh, surely there was no Messianism before Christ came, say, no, that's ridiculous. We know that's not true because the Book of Mormon says it's not true. You just look, start from the Book of Mormon. And then all these apocryphal texts come out and they all say that have been rejected. If you revisit this, they all agree with the Book of Mormon. They all say, oh yeah, Messianism was always there. Adam was hearing it. The Testament of the Patriarchs were saying it. Abraham was saying it. Everybody was saying it. They were all saying Messianism predated Christ, specifics about Christ, his suffering. You know, Bart Ehrman said, not a Jew on the planet, right? Not a Jew on the planet thought the Messiah would suffer.
Yeah,
well, Bart Ehrman didn't check with every Jew, apparently.
Oh, savage.
He didn't check with every Jew, because there were a lot of Jews writing these apocryphal texts who said exactly that. They said, he will suffer these things for you. He will come down in the flesh. He will take upon your afflictions. These are all through these apocryphal works, which is convenient if you dismiss them all.
Yeah, okay.
Because now your theories all work. But if they happen to be true, and you can't just throw them out, then apparently there were some Jews on the planet who knew that the Messiah would be the Son of God and he would suffer, et cetera, et cetera. So look, I have no critique of Bart Ehrman. I actually want to agree with Bart Ehrman. He's exactly right. He's looking at the canon and he's saying, this doesn't add up. He's right. It doesn't add up. And what he's doing unknowingly is supporting the claims of the Book of Mormon, which are saying that it's been corrupted and that the suffering Messiah was present from the beginning, et cetera, et cetera.
Wait, so you're saying that the work of Bart D. Ehrman accidentally supports the Book of Mormon?
Yes.
Yeah.
It totally does. And he didn't know it. And the Book of Mormon, obviously Joseph Smith didn't really know it. But what he's saying, essentially, if you boil it down, he's saying the canon that was passed down to us does not agree with the Book of Mormon. Okay. And people stop right there and they go, well, Book of Mormon must be false. And you go, well, actually, but that's exactly what the Book of Mormon says. It says, I'm not going to agree with the canon. I'm here to help save the canon, right? That's the kind of the central claim of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And so the reason that I love Bart Ehrman and I respect Dr. Ehrman is because he's like Thanos.
Okay.
That's what this is really about, guys. It all goes back to the MCU, which you two are pathetically underversed in, might I say.
Hey, if they hadn't turned it boring, I'd have kept watching.
Dude, I
watched the first part of the Thanos one, whatever that's called, and then I was like, okay, I'm out.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how we can keep doing this podcast. That is the Empire Strikes Back of our generation. Infinity War.
That speaks so ill of us.
Okay, Dave. Dave, we haven't heard a lot from you, man. You got to jump right in and tell us what you think of all this.
It's super interesting. At the very highest level, at the very least, even if you said, man, I'm not convinced by, Jonah's arguments that these books actually are that old, right? At the very least, what you have is the interesting question of where does Christianity come from? And a long time it was sort of presented as an aberration from Judaism, like, you had the first temple, and then the natural evolution was to the second temple, and then the natural evolution was to rabbinical Judaism, and then those dumb Christians, what the heck are they thinking?
Early
they
Christians
misunderstood everything
out of nowhere.
Yeah, early Christians are kind of treated as like this 100-year offshoot of Judaism before they finally got their own club car.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And what we're now seeing is that First Temple had multiple descendants. The rabbinical Jews are one descendant of the First Temple. Other kinds of Jews are other descendants of the First Temple. Christians are a descendant of the First Temple. Gnostics were descendants of the First Temple.
Yep.
Whose point of view we don't really know much about them. We have their books, but we don't know like their organizations or where they operated often. So Mandeans, right? Samaritans are all descendants of the First Temple. And a lot of Christians, even if we thought, right? So this is not the thesis of Jonah's book, but like if we soften it way up, even if we thought, man, those things were written by Christians, at the minimum, what you have is a wave of documents coming along saying, hey, a whole bunch of early Christians believed that they were not only legitimate descendants of the First Temple, but they were the legitimate descendants, that what the First Temple had, the real doctrines of the First Temple before they got mutilated involved, included knowledges of a redeeming Messiah and, different understandings of the garden and Lucifer, et cetera, in agreement with the Book of Mormon, right? In agreement with the Book of Mormon on multiple points and coming after the Book of Mormon. So even at the very sort of softest level, it's an astonishing vindication for Joseph Smith.
And they don't come out. I mean, many early Christians were hostile to the Jews and the Jewish tradition. Many of them were very, very, very hostile. Some of the stuff that sometimes I read and I'm like,
sure.
It's iffy. It's a borderline like
mustache man.
You're surprised Mustache Man didn't pick it up,
Legit. Like, some of it, the Russian Old Slavonic Palea, some of that language is like, oh baby. Yeah. So they're very hostile towards Jews. Yet these are Christians who are going back to the patriarchs of the Israelite nation and putting in there, we fit perfectly with this tradition. We are still heirs of Abraham and of Naphtali and of Isaac, and they're writing this messianism back into it. Even if you believe that that's how it worked, you got to say, like, they didn't just say, burn all that down, we're totally different. No, they believed it was a strand that was continuing. If you, and I think this is another section of the book that is a bigger discussion. If you believe that Jesus and John came to the Jewish nation and just said, guys, things are going great and everything, we're gonna take it a different direction. We're gonna go this way, Christianity. That's kind of a weird, it does, first of all, it doesn't jive with what the New Testament says, right? Jesus and John are restorers. They're coming to restore the ancient Israelite religion, not to just change it. We have this picture, this snapshot of Judaism in 30 AD, and we think we back project it thousands of years, and we say this is how Judaism always was. When Jesus and John don't say, scrap everything. Who are they maddest at? They're maddest at scribes. Jesus has his harshest condemnations for who? The people writing the canon. Those are the people he's flipping pissed at, right? Because they've perverted the canon. They've rewritten the history. And yet we buy it. And yet Christians who love Jesus, we look at those scribes in the Old Testament that they passed down to us and we go, oh, I love you. And we just gobble it all up. And you say, well, wait a minute. Kind of one of the things Jesus was trying to get across is that you scribes have corrupted. In the scriptures ye think ye have salvation. You think it's in there. You've screwed it all up, right? And he's using the scriptures against them. He's battling these scribes to try to restore the ancient Israelite religion. Now we get a flood of apocryphal documents that say exactly that. And the Book of Mormon, first of them, says exactly that. Says you used to have all these plain and precious truths. You used to have in the ancient Israelite religion, Christ, specifics, suffering Messiah, resurrection, virgin birth. You used to have all of this, right? And Bart D. Ehrman is correctly saying, but you don't anymore. It was all taken out. And it's like, yes, Bart, that's exactly what Nephi said would happen. They trodden underfoot the very God of Israel, right? They rip out the truths. And Bart D. Ehrman is saying, they absolutely did rip out the truth. So the reason I love Bart D. Ehrman is because he's like Thanos. He commits to the bit, okay? Thanos was like, hey, we're getting crowded. You ever been like in traffic? And you're like, man, this is really crowded. I wish there were so many cars here. Are you willing to snap away half of the people in existence? Or are you just a little hypocrite, right? Nietzsche, he's like Nietzsche. Nietzsche says, the German philosopher, the genealogy of morality, he says, hey, if you're going to be an atheist, go all the way, baby. If you're really going to be a true atheist, commit to the bit. Look at this mustache. This man commits to things. Look at the mustache on this man. Yeah. Okay? He doesn't go halfway with this.
Little unkempt.
Yeah. Oh, from somebody who doesn't appreciate Infinity War, I'm not even going to countenance that comment.
Nietzsche has a chin more like Thanos than Bart Ehrman does, though.
That's true, I guess.
They have the big manly chin. So a couple comments what you've been saying. It is interesting that some of the gospel writers, like the canonical gospels, Matthew and John in particular, on the one hand seem intimately familiar with Palestine of the first century and its institutions, and so we would think that they're Jewish, but they also seem to be very upset with the Jews. Right, which raises this kind of weird question of, well, who are they? And the answer seems to be they are Hebrews, but maybe they don't see themselves as Jews. Jews is a different party from them. And the other
that's a good. You're right. That's a good observation.
Yeah. The other sort of question is, like, which is intrinsically more probable? Okay, that we've got kind of, the religion of Judaism going along. It's continuous. It's all hunky-dory. And then suddenly a whole bunch of people just go absolutely nuts for a new and different thing. Okay?
And God. If you're a believer, you have to believe God did the same thing.
Right. Or is it more intrinsically probable that actually the Christians who are making this claim are not bonkers and that there was at least something, right? At least something whether it was full-blown messianic prophecies, or whether it was, a different understanding of the Psalms and the kingship in the Old Testament in the First Temple period, something that, an antecedent of Christianity. Yes. Is it more likely that Christianity came from somewhere, or is it Christianity ex nihilo?
Well put. Christian ex nihilo. I want to ask Christians this.
Yeah.
The most important thing in the history of things was only thought up in 30 AD?
Right.
Think about what you're saying.
Is that likely? Or is it more likely that, yeah. Or it's even not ex nihilo. It's something like, it's these Galilean fishermen, and they're like, you know what we need? We need to go borrow the Hellenistic ideology of the city-state god. That's what we need. I've been reading about that on the internet. It sounds really good. Let's make ourselves one. That doesn't feel, that feels nuts. It seems manifestly more likely on its face that there were actually things in the history of their own people that they believed they were carrying on, restoring, or responding to. And that's what the Apocrypha, the Book of Mormon, suggest.
That is the remnants before the Great Forsakening.
The Forsakening.
You know, that survived the Great Forsakening.
The Shichichehu.
Shichicha.
The what?
The Shichicha.
Shichicha.
It's the word from the Forsaken.
No, I thought
Weren't
that
you
was
here
the
last
word
time?
for the double-breasted goddess.
No, that's Shaddai.
That's Shaddai, the god with breasts.
Cardon, please try to keep up here, okay?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, you need to go watch Infinity War. You need to study up on your Hebrew.
Ward Radio Hebrew School.
Yeah, dude, rock on. That's cool. Okay. So, guys, what else? Is there anything else on this one?
So there's one last person.
I feel like the stagecoach driver of the Wells Fargo stagecoach. I've just got these two giant horses, these Clydesdales, just pulling me along, and I'm just trying to make sure that we make it to the end on time without going over the cliff, because I got nothing to contribute here. You guys are just I'm just glad I'm here at batting practice with Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio. You know what I'm saying?
If Bart Ehrman is flattered, because I actually am a huge fan of Bart Ehrman.
He's a flat earther?
No, flattered.
Oh, flattered.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But if he's flattered by that, we're going to make him sad, because the most recent picture in the Discord is the political equivalent of Bart D. Ehrman. I just put it. It's the most recent photo. He's wearing a red tie. Okay. So there's Thanos. Thanos is the commits to the bit. Look, if Bart D. Ehrman's going to say, if you're going to say, we need to look at these texts critically, then look at them critically. And Bart Ehrman does that. Thanos is like, I'm tired of traffic. I'm going to snap away all of human life. Okay. And the other person who does it is Donald Trump. Bart Ehrman is the scriptorian kind of equivalent of Donald Trump. Donald Trump commits to the bit.
Yeah.
He commits to the bit. He's like, oh, you think I'm like some crazy bombastic tyrant? Fine. I'll show you crazy bombastic tyrant. And he commits to the bit. And Bart D. Ehrman gets all this hate because he follows through with it, like Nietzsche, like Thanos, and like Trump. He says, look, if it isn't inerrant, then you have to treat it critically. You have to wonder who wrote it, how'd they write it, why'd they write it, when did it get incorporated in the canon? And these things tick off the Bible inerrancists. And so,
dude, the cynical search engine optimization critic in me, the YouTuber in me, all right, is really questioning now.
You want to put Trump?
Whether or not I should say Bart D. Ehrman is the Donald Trump of Christianity or of academic biblical scholarship.
Yeah, there goes that
or
invite.
whether I
He'll
should
never
say, or whether I should say Bart D. Ehrman versus the Book of Mormon. Dude, Donald Trump, the second you put Donald Trump in a title of a video, like just
sure.
I think Donald Trump is Thanos would probably be your biggest.
But in this, because they commit to it. Because they commit to the bit.
Let's choose right now. Should we say Donald Trump? No, sorry. Bart D. Ehrman is the Donald Trump of biblical scholarship who accidentally proves the Book of Mormon is true. If that fits underneath the 100 letters that YouTube allows, we might just have to do that one, man.
Yeah,
you know?
or Bart D. Ehrman, Thanos, Joseph Smith, and Trump all walk into a bar. I don't know how you put the point is that they commit to it. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a giant purple titan. He's orange, clearly. I'm not saying that Bart D. Ehrman has superpowers. I'm not, but they all commit to it. They go, Nietzsche, the mustache could be supernatural because that looks beyond natural human ability to grow, but they commit to it. And Bart D. Ehrman commits to it. He says, if it's inerrant, and sometimes I hear Christians who will be like, well, but this one verse isn't really actually translated correctly. And I'm like, well, hold up. If that verse isn't translated correctly, what are you basing that on? Like, and what other verses should we re-examine? If that's a turtle, what turtle is that turtle standing on? And they don't commit to it. They don't go all the way to say, maybe we should examine this whole thing critically, because I think if you do, you find out that you need the Book of Mormon. I think that's the conclusion of a good, true, critical scholar of the Bible. Is you look at it and you say, without the Book of Mormon, this all falls apart.
Dude, I think we're going to title it, Bart D. Ehrman proves the Book of Mormon is true. ... End is the Donald Trump of biblical scholarship. If that all fits in there, I'll take it. So, any final thoughts before we jam? None.
Look, the Messiah is all over the ancient world. It's all over these ancient texts. Don't be ashamed that the Book of Mormon comes out of the gate saying it. The Messiah was all over. Joseph was right all along, and the Apocrypha vindicated.
Okay, awesome. If you guys have any comments below, please make sure that you stick them in the comments section. Jonah Barnes actually is one of the guys that oftentimes polices our comment section and will be responding to all of your commentary here the day that the video comes out. So if you got a different opinion, if you think he's wrong, then let us know. Also, if you think Bart D. Ehrman is not indeed the Donald Trump of biblical scholarship, maybe he's more like an FDR. Maybe he's more like a Bill Clinton.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Then
Wow,
maybe
I'm
you
a little
can
lost.
give your maybe you can give your explanation thereof. Either way, we want to put out a couple of reminders here. Please make sure you guys check out, at Plain and Precious Publishing, In the Language of Adam. This right here is actually Dave Butler's book. Okay, Dave Butler wrote this. It's totally awesome. This is the same website where you will be able to purchase Jonah Barnes' book, The Key to the Keystone, all right, which I still think you should have called Lehi's Apocryphal Genesis. I'm just saying.
Well, I did until it went beyond Genesis, and then I'm like, oh, shoot.
Dang it.
It's
okay,
a rabbit hole, yeah.
That's true. But anyway, please check it out at Plain and Precious Publishing. There will be a link in the description of this video. If you guys want to support the channel, make sure that you guys buy a hat, or if you would like to contribute, please consider a contribution through Zelle. And as always, there's one last thing we got to pub.
The hat?
Boom. Yeah, we got the War in Heaven veteran hats.
So good.
In the merch store. Make sure you guys check them out at wardradio.com.
It's a missionary tool. You can use it for missionary. People ask, wait, what's that hat? There you go.
Yeah. Missionaries of Ward Radio. Are we going to call people to be missionaries of Ward Radio and just give like a hat and then like a signed little, you've been called to be missionary?
I love it.
All right, guys, for this and more, please make sure you check us out at wardradio.com.
Passion. Be about it all action.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. We hope you liked it, so please share with your friends and subscribe to our channel. Also, if you want to support us, please consider purchasing a copy of The Key to the Keystone, Jonah Barnes' latest book. It's available to Ward Radio listeners only for the first 2 weeks of pre-sale via the links in the description below, okay? You can always go to plainandpreciouspublishing.com and get your own copy of the book, or you can actually go to the kind of launch event that we're cooking up here. All the guys from Stick of Joseph, Quick Media, Jacob Hansen, many of us here at Ward Radio, we're actually going to have a launch event for this book in Utah that you can buy tickets for as well. And your ticket's going to be the book, so you get a book as your ticket coming in. It's actually going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to support the channel and you can't help us out with Zelle or with Venmo or with the Cash App, please consider purchasing your own copy of The Key to the Keystone by Jonah Barnes, so you can be up on all the latest super cool associate professor of all things apocryphal happenings. Remember, the first 2 weeks only, Ward Radio listeners get a unique link and unique access to the purchase of the pre-sale of this book. So make sure you check it out in the links in the description below. And as always, for this and more, please check us out at wardradio.com.